The military takeover in Gabon is the 8th in West and Central Africa since 2020. And the latest, the mutinous soldiers in Gabon proclaimed their guard chief as the country's leader. This after placing the just re-elected president Ali Bongo under a house arrest. Well, General Brice Oligui Nguema has been appointed as the transition leader. The question is, what exactly is happening in Gabon? And are there any possibility of the Gabon coup following the same pattern as other West African countries? To talk more on this, we have with us Professor Freedom Onuha. He's joining us live from Nigeria, and he's a professor at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Thank you so much for joining us on WION, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
Right, and Professor, for starters, help us understand, why was there a coup? This is the 8th in West and Central Africa since 2020.
Yes, thank you. As you have rightly pointed out now, the coup in Gabon is the latest in a series of coups that has raised serious concern about the surging or the resurgence of coup in West and Central Africa. Again, issues of coup d'etat and junta is something that was much more prevalent in the 1980s and late 1990s. But since the 2020, we have seen series of coups taking place in Burkina Faso, in Guinea, in Mali, to some extent in Sudan. And so what has now happened is that people are beginning to query whether the kind of democratic institutions Africans have inherited in terms of the return to democracies in 2000, whether they were strong enough to serve as a beacon of hope for people in Africa. And I think with what has happened in Gabon, a lot of questions has been raised. First is that, do we have the kind of elections that support democracy? Second is also the character of the elected regimes, particularly civilian regimes. And third, more importantly also, is the way and manner in which the military has been configured. In the case of Gabon, I think a lot of concerns. People are really asking, is this really a coup to end almost 55 years of the rule of the Bongos, or is it actually a protest against democratic deficit? For me, I think it's actually in between. What has happened is that, you may know, that the Bongos, that is Omar Bongo, has been there since 1937, and then in 2009, when he died, his son Ali Bongo took over and has been the president going for the third term. So the last election was characterized with a lot of flaws. There were issues of belated arrival of materials. There were issues of not removing the names of those who were supposed to participate in the election.
Right, I was just coming to that we've also seen people rejoicing on the streets after the coup, which ended 56-year-old Bongo's dynasty rule.
Yes, I think, again, it is actually a manifestation of an outburst of happiness. But again, we need to sound a note of caution. A note of caution. Most of the people who are actually celebrating are very young persons. And again, these are people who did not live under military rule. These are people who are less than 25, 30 years, who did not actually see the dangerous side effects of military rule in Africa. But then it's also a sense of optimism, because it's like a break to the rule of the Bongos. In fact, there is already concern what people have corrupted the situation as what they call Gabongos, which is actually a conjoined word that comes from Gabon and the Obongos family. So you have to talk about, try to break the dynasty of Gabongos, because it appears as though that the state of Gabon is part and parcel of the property of the family of the Obongos family. So having seen this kind of break, it definitely will trigger that sense of happiness, that sense of joy. But I think it's very important. We really need to probe deeper into the dynamics, because even Brice Nguema, who is now the head of the junta, is a cousin to Omar Bongo, and so to Ali Bongo. And so the question is, he has been there for a very long time. Remember, also, he was the aide-de-camp, that is the ADC of Omar Bongo, and then later was made the head of the presidential guard of Ali Bongo, which means, therefore, that this guy has been within the cycle of leadership for a very long time.
Absolutely.
So it is not a complete break from the dynasty or the family rule. I think it's just more or less a change of personality and a change of uniform.
Absolutely, Professor. Now, there was also a recent video that surfaced in which the detained president, Bongo, can be seen seeking help from foreign allies. What is expected on that front?
when I think that that desperate call was a clear reflection of his powerlessness in the context of the fact that he has lost control of power and there's very little or nothing that he can do. Again, he's part of the persons that fed the tiger that is about to eat him, because he was part of the people who supported the emergence of Bryce as the leader of the presidential guard, and Bryce also carried out a far-reaching reform that made the presidential guard much more powerful than it was before Ali Bongo regime. Therefore, in the face of that seeming powerlessness, he's only left to call for support. And I really do not think the support is going to come for several reasons. Granted that the African Union, granted the United Nations, and even granted that France and other West African countries have actually condemned the coup. But I think there's very little that will come his way, because again, they are going to confront this dilemma we're already talking about. Because the Bongo's family has been in the helm of affairs for 55 years. So people are desperate to see a break, even though to a very large extent that Bryce is part and parcel of that family. The point is that it gives them that momentary solace that a new face has come, at least not bearing the name of Bongo, bearing a different name. And these are young persons, like I mentioned earlier, who actually have not really had an experience of the deficit of military junta in Africa. These are very young persons who are actually looking for a change, and also looking for opportunities for them to realize their full potentials. So a change in that direction can easily garner their interest. But I think we need to sound a note of caution on that.
Absolutely, Professor. We'll have to wait and see how things pan out in Gabon. But thank you so much for joining us on WION and sharing insights with us on this. Thanks very much.